Hello and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to this webinar from Enterprise Ireland today. It's a view from the international markets with a focus on the IMEA region. My name is Nicola Kelly. I am a Senior Market Advisor with Enterprise Ireland based in Johannesburg in South Africa. And it's my absolute pleasure to be your host for the next hour or so. So Irish companies trading internationally have been impacted in every single market due to the global nature of the COVID-19 pandemic. But even before this once in our lifetime event descended upon us, Irish companies were diversifying their export markets to reduce their reliance on the UK. So all of that work that's been underway by Enterprise Ireland and our client companies, innovating and diversifying, is more helpful now than ever. So just how much our world has changed is evident from our annual business review, which Enterprise Ireland released a couple of months ago. 2019 was in fact a record-breaking year for Enterprise Ireland clients. Exports were up 8%. There was really strong growth outside the UK, and then COVID-19. So like everyone else, Enterprise Ireland had to revise our strategy and our support system for Irish business to respond to this new reality. But it's a real testament to the diligent preparation of many Irish companies that they did actually enter 2020 in a stronger and more resilient position than would have been the case. So the focus of our energy now as we move towards a new phase is helping Irish exporters to adapt their business models, move to online selling, and recover sales as international markets start to reopen. So let me tell you what we hope to cover in this morning's session. The IMEA region is India, Middle East, and Africa. It encompasses about 40% of the world's population. So we're going to be in conversation with four very experienced panelists. They're going to share their expertise in the region and the highs and lows of their export journeys to this very exciting market. So we want to give you a bit of an overview on the IMEA region, a look at how Irish companies are tackling the new virtual marketplace, the importance of relationships and managing those relationships in the region, and of course, how you even go about approaching a region that's as diverse and geographically vast as IMEA. So now, more than ever, sharing our experiences in key and new markets for Irish exporters provides such an advantage. So Enterprise Ireland supports about 5,000 companies across all stages of development. So we're delighted to have three such companies with us here this morning. So on our panel today, we have Conor Fahy, the Enterprise Ireland Regional Director for India, the Middle East and Africa. We have Michael Connolly, who looks after business development in exports for Connolly's Red Mills. We have Stephen Burke, who's the CEO and co-founder of Cyber Risk Aware. Stelios Theodoros, who looks after commercial in the IMEA and LATAM areas for WaterWipes. So thank you all for your time this morning. Can I ask you all to pop on your webcams? Before we get into the session, let me just say that if you do have any questions, please just pop them into the chat function. We will have time for Q&A towards the end of this morning's discussion. So welcome again, gentlemen, and maybe let's start by going around our virtual table for some brief introductions. So maybe tell us a little bit more about who you are, what you do, and your current presence in the IMEA region. So can we start with you, Stelios?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Nicola. Good morning, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Stelios, very complicated last name, so I'll keep it with the first name only today. I'm the commercial VP for IMEA and LATAM regions for WaterWipes, where I have been working with for over 3 years now, together with a great team of people who helped me and helped the business develop this brand and export this brand in over 40 markets. What we're looking for, what we're looking after in our regions. Today I will mainly be focusing on the Middle East, although I will touch a bit on the challenges we've had with India and also Africa as regions. And just to tell you a little bit about WaterWipes, it's an Irish family-owned business. For those of you who don't know WaterWipes, based out of Drogheda since around 2009. It manufactures the world's purest baby wipes. Today, WaterWipes employs around 260 people. And the export journey of WaterWipes started back in 2014 with the US market, and Australia and New Zealand being the first export markets. And then 3 to 4 years later, a lot of other markets followed. And today we export the brand to over 55 markets. And for me personally, the driver to develop especially the Middle East business, primarily when I joined the WaterWipes, was how much this market is open to premium and innovative brands. So some of those markets that I will talk about later, especially in the Middle East, are currently our flagship markets, flagship export countries and markets, where we are trying to basically copy some of the best practices we've seen and we are experiencing every day. So I will focus a lot on Middle East, but happy to answer any questions on India and Africa.
Perfect. Thank you, Stelios. Over to you, Stephen.
Good morning, everybody. Delighted to be here. My name is Stephen Burke, and I'm delighted to be joining my fellow panelists along with Enterprise Ireland today to talk about our journey in IMEA and around the world. We founded our company in 2016. We focus on helping companies assess and mitigate human cyber risks, so susceptibility to phishing emails, lacking in awareness on policy or security practices, for example. And we've been growing steadily since then. We've got clients all over the world, from Australia to North America to Europe, and obviously the IMEA region itself. We first started doing business in IMEA in 2017. Kind of happened naturally. Someone in our network introduced us to a software distributor, and through a conversation we realized there was a gap in the market. They saw a gap in their portfolio, so we ended up with a client within the first few months in Angola. And having never set foot in Angola, we were like, wow, just shows you what you can achieve if you're introduced to the right folks. So, whilst it was Angola first client, South Africa was our first target market. But in the last 12 months, we've changed that now to be sub-Saharan Africa, and we'll naturally progress outside of that as we go. So look forward to talking later on. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. And over to you, Michael.
Good morning, everybody, from Dubai, where I'm based at the moment. Connolly's Red Mills, established in 1908, is a fifth-generation Irish family business. So we've been around the block a few times, and we've been exporting since the mid-1980s. And today, the Middle East and Indian North African markets constitute about 40% of our exports. What we do in Connolly's Red Mills is fundamentally we turn grain products into value-added products. We have a fully vertically integrated agribusiness, which is mainly domestic. We have a pet food business, which we distribute in Ireland, UK, and some other parts of the world. But by far, from an export point of view, our biggest business is horse nutrition and health care products, which are now distributed to over 80 countries worldwide, in which we are the global leader in terms of performance. It's a small market. The total market is only worth about 2 billion, but we have quite a large share of that market. And I would say we're probably the biggest global brand in that regard. So we're focused on the Middle East because we do very well where people don't grow grains and where we can supply our products where there's the greatest need. The Middle East is our biggest growing market, which is why I personally relocated here, and we set up a company in the region.
Fantastic. And so 3 very different stages of export development. We're really looking forward to hearing those kind of unique perspectives. Last but very much not least, my colleague Conor Fahy.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Nicola. I suppose just a bit of background about myself. I've been with Enterprise Ireland for quite a number of years. I've worked in Central Europe, Russia, Hungary, Italy, Latin America, and I returned to this region having worked here 20 years ago, last October. And I suppose India, Middle East and Africa encompasses quite a lot of markets, probably around 200, of which Enterprise manage the region from 8 offices. So it's quite vast, it's a complex set of markets. But given the time available, what I felt I'd do is focus on a small number of themes, I think, which are common across the region. And let's start with this pandemic. When I look back in the early part of this year, I heard the first use of the word black swan. And now I think we all know what that means. But if I think about this region in particular, there's 3 areas I'd like to just touch on. One is volatility, the second is uncertainty, and the third is complexity. And starting with volatility, I don't know how many webinars I've been on this year where we had various economic forecasters giving us kind of insights about how this pandemic would affect the economies of this region. And really what's emerging now is very much what I would regard as a W-shaped, insipid recovery, where we're seeing peaks of COVID subjecting economies to further containment measures and lockdown again, and then coming back again to some form of normal, and then potentially returning back to some form of containment. So that volatility is continuing, and I think will continue certainly into next year. Uncertainty, the whole aspect of the pandemic and its effect on business has deeply affected companies' confidence, and that is expressed here in this region by the PMI data, which is really fragile, and it's likely to continue so for some time. We can see it in the consumer demand, where we have reduced footfall, we have reduced expenditure, and right across all sectors of our economies. We don't see any immediate end in sight. And in fact, last week I was at a business event here in Dubai, where a very senior business person was indicating that only in 2023 was his company forecasting a return to 2019 levels. So quite a daunting and quite a pessimistic perspective from a very senior businessman here. In terms of complexity, I think what's happening, and we're seeing it in a variety of different ways, the return to some form of normal is very difficult and very complex to implement. And as we've seen in Ireland in the last few weeks, health regulations can make some operations non-viable. And I can see, for example, even though flights have returned here in the Gulf, and we have a return by Etihad and Emirates to some form of schedule, travel will remain difficult, and if not impossible, some markets. I now like to touch on 3 factors I think you should be aware of that's going to be kind of part of everyday life in terms of the business world here. The first is oil, the second is supply chains, and the third is the economic imperative. I'll start with oil. So really, in terms of the Gulf, we're talking about the Middle East, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and in terms of Africa, largely Nigeria. There's been a huge hit to crude consumption, and that's likely to endure beyond the pandemic. We've seen major figures in the oil industry talking about peak oil demand having been reached. And the crisis is only adding to the challenges that oil is going to face in the years ahead, with travel bans, lockdowns, slashing consumption. And we're seeing technology, obviously we're all working remotely, we're seeing the need to travel being reduced, and all of that's likely to persist. And what's the effect on oil? Well, Brent crude is hovering around $40 a barrel, and prospects for further rebound are actually pretty weak. So the effect on the largest markets in the Middle East, which would be Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states, is likely to see government budgets cut by 20 to 30%. And only the fact that we have such significant sovereign wealth funds here in Kuwait, Saudi, and Abu Dhabi, there is a form of a backstop where drawdowns are going to be very substantial in the year ahead. The second theme I'd like to touch on is the impact on supply chains. Supply chains and their resilience over the last few months have really been tested. And a lot of companies are starting to really look at the supply chain and the vulnerabilities within that. And particularly in this region in the Middle East, companies are looking to de-risk. They're looking to find ways where they can have greater assurity of supply. They're moving suppliers. They're looking for other ways to increase efficiency, to reduce bottlenecks. And short-term mitigation means engaging with some of their suppliers to identify cost reductions and renegotiate contracts. And we've seen that with some of our companies. But we're also seeing companies take up that opportunity by establishing a presence in markets like India over the past few months, because they see maybe a shift from, particularly from mainland China, to closer markets, and India is now being seen as a potential new source of sub-supply. The last theme I want to touch on in this area is the whole area of the economic imperative. If you take Africa and India, which represents about 35% of the world population, these are large populations with relatively weak healthcare infrastructure. And today I was talking to my colleague in Mumbai, and he was telling me that the caseload or the new level of new cases in India is now 60,000 plus per day. So just to put things in perspective, this pandemic is likely to push the region of sub-Saharan Africa towards its first recession in 25 years, while India has also recorded its lowest economic growth in 3 decades. So this is, as Nicola rightly positioned this, is a lifetime change, if you like, in terms of its impact. But Africa and India have amongst the youngest populations in the world. If you take the median age, half the population in India and South Africa is 28, and the median age in Nigeria is 18. So the death rates, in fact, are showing up to be actually lower than Europe and other parts of the Western world. That being said, I do think the recovery will be slow. And I think the economic imperative, which is driving governments to decide to reduce measures to get basically economic back to the economies back into some form of functioning role, there's no safety net for displaced workers. So we're seeing South Africa this week go back to level 1 with some flights returning. So what does it mean for companies that I feel are looking at this region for the first time? If we take away the pandemic, this region is brimming with promise. Opportunities abound, but in some places there are perils for our companies. And I think what's testimony to the companies that have been successful here, including our 3 panelists that we share today on the call, is that they all have a compelling offer. So the first of the 3 C's, if you like, is a compelling offer. And if you can work with us to ensure you've robustly tested your product or solution in front of an actual buyer, and you know how to communicate how it saves them money, makes them some process that might be more efficient, or makes the money, then you have a compelling offer that could well be successful here. But in addition, you need to show commitment. That's generally because these markets are relationship-based and require extensive investment in buyer development, which is obviously very challenging at the moment when we're all working in a very virtual world. And the last piece of that jigsaw is the capability. You need to have the financial resources, the cultural awareness, and the people who can go after these markets, and they're not for short-term return. On average, our clients in this region take on at least 18 months, if not more, to do business here. So in conclusion, I think Enterprise Ireland, our adoption of our approach over the interim period of the start of this pandemic was to develop a kind of a framework in which we can balance our supports for companies wherever they are in terms of the challenges they're facing. So we're looking at, first of all, trying to stabilize your business, helping you to maintain your operations, retain your employees. The second aspect then, it would be resetting, adapting your business, planning your operations to the new conditions you're facing. And the last element then would be recovery, where we're trying to help you to recover your position in the market, capitalize maybe on early demand as economies return. So no matter how COVID has affected your company, I think Enterprise Ireland has supports available to you. And my final comment on this segment of the call is a bit of a shout out to our new podcast series, which we launched recently, which focuses on the opportunities across this region. And it's called Enterprise Ireland MENA, and you'll find it on all podcast platforms, including Spotify. So back to you, Nicola.
Thank you very much, Conor. That was a very comprehensive overview of a very vast region. So it's really good to get that sentiment from someone who's there on the ground. And I think, you know, there's absolutely no doubting the deep impact financially and otherwise of COVID-19, which really leads us nicely into virtual selling. How do you maintain your new business pipeline? So that's one of the most pressing issues for sales and marketing teams around the globe, and particularly for the IMEA region. As Conor mentioned, it's very much about face-to-face meetings. That is how you build that foundation for trust, and only then the sales come. So dealing with very different sectors, as you guys are, it'll be really interesting to hear how you were developing those relationships pre-pandemic and how you're navigating this new world remotely. Stelios, can we start with you?
Yes, sure, Nicola, thank you. So yeah, virtual selling. I would call it not necessarily virtual selling, because it has forced us to be more on the virtual side the last 9 months. But actually, I would go back 3.5 years ago when we were starting the journey of exporting the WaterWipes brand, looking at the Middle East, looking at to Africa, to India. So one of the most important aspects of our strategy back then was our route to market model. So we were looking, okay, how we want to export the brand, what's the best way that we can do this in a fairly unknown region to the company back then. So within this strategy, we have defined that we want to partner up with some companies locally. And actually, we have selected really a handful of partners. Those partner distributors are not just external companies that, you know, we are transactionally doing business with. Those distributors are really an extension of our business. Even in some cases, those companies can be way larger than us, but still, I think the key for us was that the most important part of this role, of this job, was to manage those relationships with sometimes much larger organizations than ours. And the key was to set a long-term plan, which in some cases have been very ambitious. To give you an example, in the UAE, we want to be the #1 baby wipes brand in the market, and you know, we have some very established players over the last years that have really resonated with the consumer. However, I can tell you, I'm very happy to tell you, 3 years later, we're in the top 3. And how have we done this? Conor mentioned something about capability before. For me, this is the most important things of all the points, you know, when you are looking to export. So we really selected the right people on the ground from like a distributor point of view, but also from our side. So we have hired someone locally to drive our business development. We have partnered with a marketing agency to help us with the communication. But also, since COVID started and Zoom and Microsoft Teams took over our lives, we have focused a lot on e-commerce. For example, Amazon started in the region, and you know, I think that the journey of the last 3.5 years and the strong relationships that we have built with those companies locally have really helped us during the COVID pandemic. Not necessarily we didn't need to do much virtual selling, but simply continue on the long-term plan, which actually we have been very lucky that the situation has accelerated this plan. So our business has developed over and above the expectations we've had as a brand and as a company.
That's fantastic, Stelios. The consumer demand is very much for safe and healthy products. So you're definitely fulfilling that demand. For Steve, for a company like Cyber Risk Aware, you're obviously in a different space because 2020 has opened up enormous opportunities for the cybersecurity industry. So in terms of your sales and marketing, how did that change over the last few months, or did it?
Yeah, no, I think we can all agree that cyber fraud since COVID came has been a 600% increase. So a clear need, and with people working from home, it has been exacerbated. So there's been a big increase in the need to focus on helping humans, which is what we do, cyber risks. So we would have done a lot of virtual selling as a technical company. We would have done that all the time. But what we have seen is obviously, you know, Stelios brought it up there, Zoom calls and Teams calls and GoToMeetings. So doing a lot of that. But that's been more focused on our partners to help bring them to market, how to sell our product, who the target, the buyer personas are. And sometimes there can be an assumption when you work with a partner that they get it, they're in cybersecurity, so it's a very easy narrative, right? But that's a big assumption. And sometimes you have to keep nurturing those partners because they've got diverse sales forces. Some people get it, some people don't. And if they're not getting traction with their clients, they quickly move on to something else that might be easier for them to sell. So we've doubled down on our partner program and broadening the partner program. And also because the buyer habits have changed as well, because people are outside of offices, partners can't call into offices and sit down face to face. So there's been a lot of online partner nurturing, partner clients, but the buyer has been going to their partner to say, look, I have this problem, people working from home, they're being targeted, what do you have in your product list that can address this? So by us having to focus on more partners means we can get more access to those clients. So it's a buyer issue and obviously a partner aspect of going to market there. One of the key things we did actually when COVID came in was when we saw these scams, whether it be, you know, fake donations to WHO or, you know, charities, or, you know, fake Teams calls or Zoom calls, we offered a free simulated phishing test to raise awareness among staff that these things are happening, but also a working from home security awareness course on how to secure yourself at home and to work with company equipment. If you haven't been given company equipment, how to secure it at home, right? So we gave that for free. And arising from that offer, we've now seen those clients who avail of that come and actually buy the rest of the platform because they saw it offered value add. So that's one key thing that delivered very quickly for us. It showed thought leadership as well, because, you know, by being there for people in their, you know, in their exact moment of need, it's a really good thing. It was a win-win. But then in terms of virtual selling, obviously we're talking about virtual marketplaces here now on this particular topic, but there's also Azure Marketplace, there's other e-commerce marketplaces that we're now putting our product into as well. And the reason for that it takes out friction for our partners to go to market, and that they can simply just buy it in the marketplace. All the agreements are in place, the commercial agreements are in place, they can just get it now. So all the commercial, the product they're buying, invoicing is all taken care of electronically. So that speeds us up to market, it speeds their ability to close deals. And they were telling us that that's what they wanted to do. If we take Azure Marketplace, the reason why we went into Azure, we're a Microsoft product, we're built entirely in Microsoft Azure, it gives us an unfair advantage, which is also something akin to our go-to-market strategy. By focusing on Microsoft partners, and they could obviously, it's a win-win for them. But by being in Azure, clients can recognize quota against Microsoft targets that they themselves have. So it's just really supplemented our strategy to know that and give us, utilize our unfair advantage as part of the selling process.
And it sounds like you were very much on this virtual sales journey already. So everything has just been accelerated and kind of come together quite nicely for you. For Michael, your new business development is very much a face-to-face exercise. So how are you tackling new business development? Obviously, you've come out of a severe lockdown. Are you managing to get in front of people now?
No, yeah, just to put it into context. So we would describe ourselves as a B2BC company, in the sense that we're business to business consumer. So our average consumer in this region, we have customers that would have up to 800 horses, and you're dealing with a structure. So you have the technical team dealing with the technical team, and your accounts are not small. It could be 1.2, 1.5 million euros per stable, and we're dealing with about 77 royal stables here in the Middle East, in the Gulf area in particular. South Africa, India, they're different. But here in the Gulf, just focusing on that, we supply that through 11 distributors. Those 11 distributors have about 35 sales reps, and we would have 6 people with a regional manager who's based out of India on the ground in some of those markets. They are, on average, about 70% able to get out and visit customers, and that goes for the whole team. So unable. So 70% of my sales team globally are not able to visit customers. They're not able to travel. Now, retention of customers is fine. Okay, we can retain them. We can talk to them if we know them. But for the guys we don't know, and what worries me about the future is really that lack of prospecting. We haven't been able to do the kind of soft capital work that is essential to our type of business. This is an old traditional business based on relationships. And once you cross the bridge in Turkey and go into Asia, relationships are absolutely essential to business growth. So that's what concerns me. And I'll echo some of the words that Conor said at the beginning about the challenges that we face. So far, we've modified our forecast from 12% down to 5.5%, and our year end is at the end of the year. A lot of that was already happening, but I think that there's some serious challenges as we go forward. The certainty, I think that word uncertainty is very, very interesting, because I think it's uncertainty, and I think that summarizes the effect of COVID, and that ripples right through everything. And the way our customers, and their customers think. So who knows? Forecasting is not my focus. I gave up on that about a month ago, and I said, look, we have got to start prospecting, and I don't care how. So health and safety of our staff is absolutely essential, but prospecting, so what we are doing to deal with it is we're leveraging the relationships that we have. We're helping those people and saying, listen, could you introduce us to other people? And that is how it works here. Certainly, we're leveraging, we have absolutely embraced, my marketing team described me as a dinosaur, and they say, Michael, you haven't really engaged with the e-platforms. So I have engaged with the e-platforms, and I'm redeploying staff. We have brought forward rollouts. So we have a healthcare company called Forens. We have another company which we actually bought in March called Cardi and Martin. And those companies now are being brought forward much faster than we had originally anticipated. But we're not going to all our distributors. We're going with our existing distributors and saying, would you take a look at this? Where we have sales staff, as I said, they're 70% deployed, or undeployed. So those 30% are being very active, and that's a huge advantage versus our competitors. We're using market research, we're using real product research. We've brought forward a lot of our research as a way to engage in prospecting. And we're training a lot of our younger sales staff who, like, literally we can't put them into that context. So we're educating them. They're learning languages. One is learning German. I'm learning Arabic. So it's a time of resetting, rethinking. It does worry me, and I want to be positive, but I am concerned. Nevertheless, we hear a lot of good things about vaccines, but we'll see.
Yeah, and I think that it's really important. We talk about equipping your staff with the necessary skills, but Conor, how do you feel about customers? Are they actually receptive to this approach in a region like IMEA? Do they want to be sold to online, or are they just waiting for the day that face-to-face returns?
It's very hard to be general on that question, but if I could say, I'd absolutely agree with Stelios that it's the existing relationships that are possible to maintain. As an agency, we have been experimenting, if you like, with virtual presentations by groups of clients to leading buyers in the region And I think that's a model that does work. I think we still have the ability to open the door as an agency to get you in front of key buyers. And one of the points I'd make about the virtual world, which certainly we have discovered, is that it is possible to reach people much easier than perhaps before. And the reason I say that is that we have buyers that perhaps in the past we might have occupied 2 hours of their time. Now we're giving them, 45 minutes, and they know that's it. So, and they don't have to travel anywhere. There's no preamble to the thing. So from our perspective, we've actually found the virtual marketplace giving us reach to people we couldn't reach before, and giving us access perhaps to market experts, which are at the bottom of a team call or whatever. So I do think that aspect of the virtual world, certainly as an agency like ours, has given us an opportunity to open doors to people directly with buyers, where in the past we might have had to do a lot more legwork on it. I think that's one advantage I think that certainly exists currently.
Absolutely, and I think there is that element of, strangely, the technology has humanized a lot of our relationships. You're looking into someone's kitchen or their sitting room, so it does bring a different element to sales, certainly. But I think all of you have
sorry. Look at that, a point to that. I think messaging becomes front and center, that you have to be on point to the specific pain points you address and the value proposition, because people are being bombarded with lots of digital marketing collateral. So to supplement what Conor's saying, they have to know about you and you have to be on point, and it has to resonate with them in the few seconds that you have for them to make a decision to, read further in whatever you've sent, whether it be an attachment or whether it be in the email itself. So I think
go back in there, Richard. I think that, Stephen, sorry, that's a really good point. We did have a recent experience actually where we put a CEO in front of 14 companies. And one of my takeaways after the presentations was some of the companies couldn't reach the compelling offer in 5 minutes. They were lost on a whole series of slides. And really that doesn't work in the virtual environment. You need to be very succinct, and you need to stand out. And certainly we have the ability to give people better capability in that area through some of the training programs we run. Like international selling now has a module geared towards selling in the virtual world. So I'm just calling out to companies to be aware of that and to avail of any of these tools that we have available.
Yeah, I would.
If I may, I'd just like to. Sorry, if I may, I just come in on that, Conor, and this is something I didn't mention. Enterprise Ireland is fantastic. They should be much greater resourced, and we're kind of a third stage. We're well developed. But Enterprise, I still go to Enterprise Ireland for an awful lot of things, and their wisdom, guidance, and support, I think, is the most important. They can make you look big in bigger markets. Just on the international selling program. It's restricted this year because I had 2 or 3 people to put on it. I was hoping to get one place, I didn't get any. So that's certainly something that could be looked at, Conor, because now of all times, if you have, let's say you have somebody that's, under-deployed, now is the perfect time to train up someone in the middle tier of management. They have time maybe now that they wouldn't have if they're going to be fully deployed after this. So I certainly would encourage Enterprise Ireland on the ISP to bring it forward. It has created a common language in our organization as to how we approach sales, and it's fantastic. Sorry to cut across.
No, that's great. It's great to hear that has been a benefit to your organization. And I think just to move on to our next kind of challenge for the IMEA region, and I think all of you have touched on how you operate at the moment, and it is through partners, it is through managing your channel partners. So I think, Stelios, you've got a very strong distribution network in the IMEA region. Did you face any distribution issues initially over the last few months? How did you overcome any of those distribution issues?
Yeah, thanks, Nicola. So we do have a very strong distribution network that we have, as I said before, we've developed very hard over the last 3 years. I think that the main issue for us, coming back to my point earlier around our business actually did very well during the last 6 to 9 months, partly because of what happened with COVID and the kind of categories that consumers were looking for. But also because we recognized early on the change, a very big shift in consumer behavior, where a typical average basket of a consumer would be of an X value, that size grew a lot, while shopping trips, or how many times we shop per week, reduced with the lockdowns. People focus a lot on online e-commerce. So I think the main issue we faced, and the main challenge, was an internal challenge, and it was around supply and forecasting. So I can tell you this year we have forgotten all about forecasting. I think we haven't used the word once this year, although it has been a word very well pronounced and very up in our priorities, very high up in the priorities in the last 2-3 years. And I think that we have all learned, because of this situation that we have faced, we've learned to be much more flexible. We've learned to be much more agile. And I think it's a very useful experience. I look at WaterWipes, a very small business 3-4 years ago that has really grew and developed into a medium-sized, becoming very soon a large company for when you look at the export side of things, a market leader in many markets. You tend to really focus on internal processes after a certain point, that because of the complexity that starts to arise when you start exporting in so many countries, so many languages, so many cultures, so many consumer insights to consider. But I think the most valuable lesson for us this year has been really that we can deal with uncertainty, and there is a way to deal with uncertainty without necessarily having to forecast everything and having to know everything what's going to happen in 1 week, in 1 month, in 6 months. So
I think that's a wonderful takeaway. If
yes.
That's the thing that people take away, is forget about forecasting. That word has been replaced. So Stephen,
Yes.
have very much followed the partnership route, as you mentioned. How difficult was it to find those partners and figuring out who's going to be the best fit to be your face and your feet on the ground?
Yeah, no, partnering for success was a key go-to-market strategy of ours, as I mentioned a few slides ago. So being a Microsoft product, an independent software vendor, that is ISV, we really doubled down on focusing on Microsoft partnerships. So reducing it, there's so many partners out there. They are being bombarded with other vendors. So how can you differentiate? How can you offer value? And one thing I heard was I used to rock in with a value-added or a reseller or a value-added distributor agreement, and you're offering margin. But so was everyone else. And someone taught me there recently that you have to go in and say, well, what's the value that we're going to bring you that makes you want to take us in? And whether that be numbers or whether it be a gap for their clients that they're trying to focus on. Managed security service partners, they're providing managed services to their clients because the clients can't hire security staff, so they outsource it. So those partners have a gap to say, not only are we going to monitor your network, we're going to manage your desktops and your laptops, but now we can help your people understand risks that they face. So it's a win-win for them that they're able to broaden their portfolio and get the extra revenue in, but also be seen by their clients that they're addressing a key issue for them. So once we said, okay, well, who are the target partners? How can we identify them? So fortunately, again, within Microsoft and Microsoft's partner scheme, they have fast-tracked us to be co-sell ready. That means that we can work with the Microsoft partner network. That has led to conversations with partners that we probably would never have even known about, because of the systems that they've given us. But again, to come back to Enterprise Ireland, and totally agree with Michael and Stelios that the trade mission last year, that for me, when I went on that trade mission down to South Africa, it was really to find out what partners and clients could I meet face to face, which at the time was what you had to do. But it led to conversations that since then we've been able to bring to market. And yes, there were Microsoft partners. And a good story was when I rocked into Johannesburg airport, all I saw was Liquid Telecom, Microsoft. And when we met the folks from Liquid Telecom on the trade mission, we brought that up, and it just instant rapport as a consequence of that. So by focusing on those parts, that's been key. So
and I think you've done very well there of in leveraging the network that's available to you, leveraging, you know, opportunities that did exist pre-pandemic, the trade mission. And over to you, Michael. So you're very, as you've mentioned, customer intimate. Were your customers coming to you seeking any kind of specific support over the last few months? How did you manage that customer relationship?
Yeah, what was worrying was the eerie silence. I think everybody, this word uncertainty again cropping up, and people just not knowing. Even some people worried about their jobs in various different contexts. So we run a CRM system called Pipedrive. So literally every week we're contacting people, text messaging, as Stephen mentioned, and and then updating them with information where racing was happening, about successes and so on. So that has become a norm. And there's a kind of there's a phase where that becomes very effective at the beginning. We invested heavily in reminding people. So this was all retention work. We're sending out videos of interviews with information of how people deal with various different complexities and problems to do with training racehorses or breeding racehorses, trying to keep it live for the region, and even as far as Japan, China, Korea, back into Singapore, Southeastern Asia, Turkey, India, and so on. But those relationships, my biggest concern is not our existing platform, it's the growth that is going to suffer, and the momentum that we had up until now, which we spend a fortune on that momentum, and that's been the biggest casualty of COVID. Getting that going again is very, very challenging. As I said, leveraging those relationships that we have, redeploying, bringing stuff forward, especially R&D work. So we would, specifically answering, yesterday I was down in Abu Dhabi here, which I have to get a COVID test to go to Abu Dhabi, not coming back from Dubai. So you have 40 minutes at the border waiting to show a guy your test and your passport and your Emirates ID card. So we met 6 clients. We presented an idea for a test now during the season, using hydrolyzed protein, which is technology from our Foreigns company, and coenzyme Q10 is a highly effective antioxidant. And in every case it worked. But it took me getting in front of them, because I'd mentioned to them, I'd written them emails, I'd sent them WhatsApps, but I had to get in front of them to make it work. So that the fact that 70% of my team are not doing that, and people are not engaging, certainly new customers are not engaging on the platform with us. So if anybody has got any good solutions there, we've tried everything, but haven't mastered that one yet. But we are getting there. I think leveraging those existing relationships is key.
Yeah, and I think it is such a big challenge, because you're facing this uncertainty, but your customers certainly are, depending on where they're living, they might be going into another lockdown, and it feels like we're moving. Certainly, I'm based in South Africa, and as Conor mentioned, we're moving to level 1. So there's certain areas that are certainly feel like they're coming out, but that cloud of uncertainty just still remains. Very quickly onto our last kind of topic. The scale of the region, obviously it's India, Middle East, Africa. How do you go, what advice would you give to someone who's looking at the region for the first time? Conor, what do you say to people?
I said earlier, it's a huge region of 200 markets. I think you need to really have a focus as to what you're trying to achieve. And I go back to maybe what Celia said earlier. They had done their planning, if you like, in advance of this pandemic, and were very focused on how they were going to execute it. I think that's the key to this region. it's like an elephant. You're not going to take it in one bite. So, you know, for us as an agency, for example, we've prioritized certain markets within this region. So it's Saudi Arabia in the Gulf, it's United Arab Emirates, and it's India, and it's South Africa and Nigeria and Kenya. So we're not actually targeting multiplicity of markets as an agency. We're aiming our shotgun, if you like, at specific opportunities in certain verticals where we think Ireland can have, I suppose, its best opportunity. And that's our approach with such a wide and diverse market. The other addition I'd say to you is that this year Enterprise Ireland has invested in Salesforce, and we're rolling that out across our network. And we're using that really to lever key contacts in markets like Nigeria, where huge market, massive potential, and we're going to be, if you like, mining our existing market intelligence to be able to marry that to opportunities for our clients.
Fantastic. Michael, I might just pick your brain a little bit about the cultural nuances. So obviously a significant portion of your business is dealing with very, very high level relationships. So how do you manage that? How do you manage to maintain the autonomy of your business in that scenario?
Yeah, indeed, and I would certainly dealing in the Gulf area where you have royal families, and their royal families, their priority is politics. They're not their priority is not business. So it's very easy to establish a relationship. The strong culture of love of animals, in particular horses and camels here in the region, is hugely important. So they care about what they're feeding. And I would often find myself at 2 o'clock in the morning sitting in the Majlis beside a number of sheikhs. But of course, you know, you get a lot of questions and so on. But everybody wants essentially to hijack your business. And this is not only in the Gulf. So maintaining, you know, a perspective on the risk of taking the opportunity in the short term, oh God, it's great, you know. But in 5 years' time, you realize that you made a complete mess of it. You chose the wrong partner. There was no sustainability. There was no ability for them to actually do that elevator pitch and get their and COVID puts a stress on that. So maintaining a very polite autonomy is a challenge. In our case, we've resolved it by partially at least by setting up here in the free zone. We have found we've dissected distribution into logistics and risk, but sales we control. So those are the two ways that we've done it. And it is one of the biggest banana skins any company anywhere in exports will find. Marrying the first partner that you meet instead of looking around the room, to use an unfortunate metaphor. I think it is key to do this. It's key to do your research. But not all of us. I mean, we're technically a large company now, but we started as an SME, and we started very humbly and pulled ourselves up by our own shoestrings. So it is, you know, you don't know what you don't know, and it takes a lot of time, which is why certainly I participated in this webinar, not only because Enterprise Ireland has done so much for us, but I think it's important that we avoid those banana skins. And it's not about big company, small company. It's not about that. Small companies, you know, we see ourselves as experts as having been a small company. So I think not really, you know, do your market research. And if you don't have the resources, EI can help you. Do your market research intensively and don't jump the gun until you see the lie of the land. And making sure that your competitive advantage at home is transferable to the market that you're going to, which is one of the most deceptive things that you can find. You'd be amazed at how you get it wrong. Even I get it wrong after 27 years in exports. So that's
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, I think that is all just so useful, and having you all here with these different perspectives and your different experiences over the last few months, that is just, it's an amazing advantage for new exporters looking at the region. And it is about making the most of the tools that are available, like the market research center that we have at Enterprise Ireland. Now, I'm going to very quickly apologize for my moderating skills. We have 5 minutes left. I'm just going to ask all of you this one very pertinent question. Has the impact of COVID-19 affected your outlook for the potential of Irish business in the IMEA region? So would you say that you are positive or negative? Shall we start with you, Stephen?
I think it depends on the sector in which you're operating in, is how I respond to it. We're seeing with second and third waves, if it does happen, it's an exacerbation of people working from home, and cyber fraud is increasing. That's our sector. But other sectors, you know, it's a viability question in some cases. There's pressure on pricing, which sometimes can make entry into a market unviable as a consequence as well, due to economic circumstances in the countries and whatnot. So it depends. I'm sorry, I'm on the fence on that one. So it's going to be a balance. But there is negative sentiment out there for sure. People are conserving cash. They're prioritizing projects which they're going to spend on. That is tied to obviously making money. Business must always win first and foremost, and how are they going to do that? If that means that they can cover risk, use it as an unfair advantage, then that's a positive thing. But
brilliant. And Stelios, how are you feeling?
Yeah, from our point of view, I think the one key question is unemployment rates, which lead to disposable income. Talking about our category, I think that the key here is to certainly try not to be pessimistic. You know, once you get down this rabbit hole, we've seen from past crises, it's very difficult to get out of. I think it's a challenge of reinventing a business model where it can be viable in the circumstances, and also doubling down on focus areas. You know, we spoke about this throughout the session around which are the strong relationships, the relationships that can be leveraged, where are the key contact points with the consumer, where you can generate more demand for the service or the product you are offering. So although I would say we are approaching the future conservatively, we're still optimistic that we can reinvent ourselves through this era that, you know, unknown to all of us.
Yeah, and I think, Michael, that's definitely your sentiment in terms of that uncertainty.
Yeah, I think that I think overall one would have to be reasonably conservative about one's expectations in the short term. But when you read a little bit of history, you see that every pandemic led to a boom afterwards. I think obviously concerns about the massive borrowing that's going on at this time. Yeah, I would say short term negative, long term positive, stay the course, survive.
Fantastic.
Hugely, because the policy, my dad, you know, be conservative, manage your risk, and be ready to catch the apples when they fall.
Fantastic. And Conor, positive or negative?
I think in terms of the first few months, I think we were all a little bit kind of shaken by the tremendous shock to the markets that we were working in. But over time, we've seen a number of our clients pivot. In other words, take opportunities as they see them by speaking to the pain points of some of their buyers and adapting solutions to fit those needs. And we've had a number of successes in the last few weeks, some quite significant, from Africa to the Middle East. And I think that's probably the signs of optimism I give you, that we are seeing companies starting to do business in this challenging environment. And we can only go one way on this. I think we will be in a recovery phase in 21, 22. But one of the things I would say to companies is you do need to show a bit of leadership in terms of your strategic direction here. And that can be best influenced by listening to the market. Because one of the things we're seeing is that buyers are looking for solutions to really new challenges. And for example, in the area of digitization, everything from the Internet of Things, smart transport, logistics, etc. All these things have been accelerated by some degree by what's happening with COVID, particularly in the Gulf. And we're seeing things that perhaps would have taken years to do are happening here very quickly. So I think that's one of the points I'd make for companies in the short term, is watch the developments in the marketplace, keep your antenna up with your buyers, and see is there opportunities for you to pivot slightly where you could possibly seize an opportunity that could be developed into something more medium term. But overall, I think we have to remain optimistic. I think historically, we've all seen cyclical events before in the past. And as an agency, we're certainly going to be investing more in this region in terms of chasing opportunities in areas where we think we can get a return on investment for our clients. So stay with us. I think the potential in this region, the sheer size of it, the demographics that are in Africa alone, where markets like Nigeria will be larger than the US in 20 years' time, has to present for us opportunities to participate in that uplift.
Thank you so much. We could spend an awful lot of time delving a lot deeper into this, but I am so appreciative of your time today. I'm going to leave you go now. You can turn off your webcams. Thank you so much for joining us, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Most welcome.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. So 2020 is in many respects a world away from 2019. There are obviously a lot of supports available to Irish business. So I'm going to very quickly run through these because we are running slightly over. So at the outset of the crisis, Enterprise Ireland set up the Business Response Hub. And since then, thousands of Irish companies have engaged with the hub to try and find out what support and initiatives are available. So please do access the Business Response Hub at the address that you see listed here. Access to liquidity, obviously critical during a crisis like this, and Enterprise Ireland has a very comprehensive suite of funds available, including the Sustaining Enterprise Fund. So please do have a look on our website to find out more information on this and the other funding supports available. We're also approaching our annual International Markets Week, which is usually a wonderful time that we all get together in the RDS in Dublin. Obviously, this year we've moved online. So if you haven't received an email on this, please do send an email to imwsupport at the email address you can see on your screen. So despite the fact that we can't travel home for this event, our energy and our enthusiasm for a chat is still very much there. So please do have a look at our IMEA team. We are all available to meet with you that week. So please do register and we'd be happy to chat to you about the region. That's it for today. Apologies for running slightly over. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us. Massive thank you to our panelists for their really interesting insights. In future days, hopefully we can do this all in person. But until then, take care and enjoy the rest of your day.